I'm Lori Heil. I'm the group's director.
And I'm Omar Anaya, the associate pastor here at EFC.
And whether you're joining us in person or online, we're so glad you're here.
Here at EFC, we are multi-ethnic and multi-generational from all over different backgrounds, but we come together to worship Jesus.
What you can expect from our service today is a kids ministry moment, some worship time, and an encouraging message from Pastor Rick.
Well, if you want to partner with us today in giving, there are two ways to give. The first way is you can download our E-Free Church app, and at the bottom of the app, you're going to find this icon where you can put the amount that you want to give online. Or the second way, there will be drop boxes in the back of our worship center, and you can put your donations there.
Also on the app, you can fill out a Connect card, listen to past messages, and fill out a prayer request. We'd love to hear from you.
Well, thanks for watching. We're so glad that you were able to join us today.
Enjoy the service.
Hey friends, I'm Dawn Summers and I'm the Director of Children's Ministries here at EFC. Welcome to the E-Free Kids Minute, where we will share a quick overview of what we've been learning and what you can focus on as a family, all in about 60 seconds. Let's go. In this week's lesson, the Israelites are in need of fresh water, and they start complaining to Moses, wishing again that they had never left Egypt. God told Moses to stand in front of the people and speak to a rock. But in his frustration, Moses struck the rock twice with his staff, and water came pouring out. God told Moses that because he didn't trust him to display his holiness, that Moses would actually never enter the promised land. To find out what happens in our lesson this week, go to the Lifeway for Kids app. Select the Gospel Project for Kids from the list of curriculum. Then choose the light version to download because it's free, and this is where you can watch the Bible teaching video. As you experience this week's lesson with your kids, talk about how we have a flawed view of sin. We think that small things like lying are not as bad as big things like murder. But really, sin is all the same to God. All sin is disobedience to God. But salvation comes from perfect obedience. It's just not our perfect obedience, but Christ's perfect obedience on our behalf that brings us, a sinful people, back into a relationship with a holy God. Thanks so much for joining us, and we will see you next week on Facebook with more ways you can connect with our community. Have a great week.
You can find the E-Free Kids Facebook group by going to our E-Free Church page, clicking More, and searching Groups.
Before I spoke the word, you were singing over me. You've been so, so good to me. Before I took a breath, you breathed your life in me. You've been so, so kind to me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I found leaves the night. I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it, still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. I was your foe, still your love fought for me. so, so good to me. Yes. When I felt no worth, you paid it all for me. You've been so, so kind to me. Yes. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it, still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. No wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. Sing that out, church. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. Yes. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. Never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. And I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it, still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. No shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me.
Hello everyone, I want to welcome you from wherever you're watching from this week. My name is Juvinal and I am the Director of Youth Ministries here at EFC. And I'll be doing our sermon this week, continuing our series titled Masterpiece. This week I'm going to take us a little bit of a different direction in our Masterpiece series. I'm going to talk about some seasons in our lives when it can be very difficult to find or even kind of see God working in our lives. However, I believe that God never abandons us. He always shows up and He is molding us into His masterpiece, even in the midst of difficult moments in our lives. Rick mentioned last week, I think, a podcast series titled The Rise and Fall of Mars Hill. And I actually just finished this podcast series. It's really good. It was put out by Christianity Today. And one thing that really stood out to me in this podcast series For the many stories of God showing up in the darkness and the seasons of despair in life. The church in the world is made up of broken people, yet God is present even in our mess and our struggle and our disappointments in life. And so that's kind of where I want to take us this week, is where we find God even in those broken, dark seasons of our lives. Now, all of us kind of feel a sense of pressure in our lives at times. The world has a lot of it. Maybe you feel the pressure of doing well in school or at work or at home. Maybe you feel it from your supervisors, your spouses, your parents, guidance counselors, or even yourself when you consider your future planning and kind of your goals and where you want to go with the rest of your life. Or maybe you feel pressure in the form of social media comparison. Everyone's life looks so much better than yours as you scroll through the highlights of people's lives. If you're anything like me or anyone else at all, it's this pressure that feeds this fear of never measuring up, never being in the group of friends you want, never getting the date that you want, never getting the promotion that you want, never living up to the expectations from yourself or others, and never having the sense of belonging that you desire. Many of us are familiar with the words stress and anxiety. You use them casually when talking about what to wear or what movie to watch. But you also use these words when you're trying to sleep at night. When you think about that big project or presentation, when you get asked about what you're going to do next in life, what's your goal for this year, what's your goal for the next 5 years. Maybe you feel that weight when your kids seem extra chaotic and disrespectful, or when you have a fight or disagreement with your spouse. The crazy thing is that we experience stress and anxiety in so many areas of our lives that we often don't even notice it. It becomes a natural part of our existence. And if we do notice it, we wonder, is this anxiety or just a little bit of stress? Is this normal anxiety or is it an overload just bearing down on top of me? Do I need to get help? Or am I taking small things and blowing them out of proportion? Do I need to just get over it? Think about this example when your car is running out of gas. The low fuel light comes on, usually accompanied by an annoying beeping sound. It's a warning sign that says, hey, I got to get to that gas station and I got to fill this car up or we're not going to get anywhere. So the question I want to ask is, what are the warning signs when it comes to anxiety in our lives? How do we know that we are crossing into those danger zones? Well, unfortunately, it's not as simple as that fuel level in a car, because you're a human being. You're dealing with a mixture of circumstances, personality, influences, hormones, and mental patterns, just to name a few of the things that are going on inside of us. And every person is different. So it's not always easy to recognize the warning signs of anxiety. But there are some symptoms that when you identify with them, it is a red flag for sure. For example, maybe it's this pressure on your chest. It's so heavy you feel like you can't breathe. Or maybe it's nighttime and you're trying to fall asleep, but you can't because your mind is racing so fast it feels like you're running on a treadmill and you just cannot stop. Or maybe it's this feeling of having knots in your stomach and you feel like you can't focus on anything else. Or maybe you're just having a tough time relaxing most of the time because you just kind of feel like you're always on edge. So what do we do then? What's normal and what's not? And more importantly, can you avoid these emotions, these feelings inside of you? Or is it just the way life is supposed to be? Stress is our body and mind's response to certain situations in life. Maybe you made a bad decision and you're worried about how people will react. Maybe you have a big game or a work responsibility coming up and you feel like the whole team is depending on you. Or maybe you got in a fight with your best friend or a loved one and you don't know how to repair that relationship. When our thoughts or the situations in our lives make us feel frustrated, nervous, worried, or angry, our bodies and our minds react. That's what stress is. It can make our bodies do strange things like have sweaty palms, a rapid heartbeat, and difficulty sleeping at night. It can also make us feel things like restlessness, nausea, and irritability. But do you know what's surprising about stress? It's not always negative. You're probably thinking, how in the world could stress be a good thing? Well, stress can be both positive and negative. In situations that upset the normal balance of your life, stress triggers your body to respond in ways that cause you to react. The stress of an upcoming project can make you restless at night, but it can also get you to focus and prepare even better. Yes, this big presentation can make you feel like you could throw up at any moment, but it can also give you this jolt of energy that you need to be your best when the moment comes. Stress is also usually short-term and a reaction to something specific in our lives. When the stressful moment is over or the situation is resolved, typically the stress goes away for the time being. Anxiety is completely different than stress. While stress is a situational, temporary response, anxiety is different. Anxiety is an overwhelming feeling of worry, unease, or fear that tends to hang around. It can affect our sleep, cause exhaustion and extreme distress, and make us unable to focus or control our worry. Anxiety generally affects us only negatively and continues long after the stressful situation is no longer there. Situations change, circumstances get better, moments pass, but anxiety tends to linger. And what can be confusing about anxiety is that while sometimes we know exactly what causes these feelings, we aren't always able to pinpoint why we feel the way we do. Sometimes anxiety is just there, and we don't know why. For those of us who experience anxiety, the reality is that when it's there, it feels constant. It's a consistent feeling of worry, fear, or nervousness that can interfere with the way we live our everyday lives. Sometimes it's brought on by circumstances we experience, like the death of someone close to us, divorce, major life changes, or an unexpected illness. But other times it's just there. We can't seem to shake it, and we don't know where it came from. It's in those seasons that it's easy to believe anxiety is something that we're just always going to feel. The moments of stress pass, but the anxiety never seems to go away. When a person has anxiety, it's a feeling that leaves them overwhelmed and worried for long periods of time. Anxiety can get to the point where it's hard to cope, change, and even move on in positive ways. So how in the world does God work in the midst of these moments, these seasons in our lives? Because the truth is, there are a lot of things that you can be anxious or stressed out about in today's world. And even if you don't regularly experience the overwhelming and long-lasting feeling of anxiety, chances are pretty high that you have friends or loved ones who do. If that's the case, what do? If we want to be able to deal with our anxiety in healthy ways or support people in our lives who are experiencing those feelings, how do we do that? How do we trust God? How do we see God forming us into His masterpiece in these difficult seasons of life? Anxiety isn't a new problem. In fact, it's a human problem. So even though it feels intensely personal, it makes you feel like no one else gets what you're experiencing, you can rest assured that you aren't the first person and you won't be the last person, and that you are not alone. That's why I love the book of Psalms. There are several different types of literature in the Bible. The book of Psalms is like a book of poetry, but in some places it's more than poetry. It's like a journal written by real people who gave us specific insight into what they were feeling. Psalm 56 is like that. It's a poem written by David, who is probably the most famous king of Israel. We're told this psalm was written when David was captured in Gath by the Philistines. In hindsight, we know that David lived through this experience, but at the time, David didn't know that. So who knows how much stress and anxiety he was feeling in this season of his life. He writes in Psalm 56, verses 1 and 2, "O God, have mercy on me, for people are hounding me. My foes attack me all day long. I am constantly hounded by those who slander me, and many are boldly attacking me." David's enemies are out to kill him. He would be crazy not to be afraid. But notice what he does here. He names the thing that is stressing him out. One of the trickiest things about anxiety is that it makes you feel powerless. It puts a general fear in your heart. That's a hard thing to beat. How do you get over anxiety that doesn't tell you to be afraid of anything specific, just the world in general? David starts by getting specific. So when we're feeling distressed, when we're feeling overwhelmed, when we're feeling anxious, in this passage we see that David challenges us to name those things in our lives. But David doesn't end there. He goes on in verses 3 and 4 and he says this, "But when I am afraid, I will put my trust in you. I praise God for what he has promised. I trust in God, so why should I be afraid? What can mere mortals do to me? Check out what David does here. He moves the focus from what's making him afraid to the God he trusts. His circumstances don't change, but his focus does. His situation doesn't get better, it doesn't shift, but his perspective does. And that's important because sometimes the thing that causes us to feel overwhelmed is something that we can't control. Because the truth is, feeling pressure or expectations are a reality. Family fights or disagreements are a reality. Friends turning on us is a reality. Chaos at home, work, or school is a reality. Sickness, illness, death, those things are all realities in this world. Those things don't always go away like a test or a project does once you've finished it. When life doesn't change, the one thing we can change is what we do with it and how we respond to the stress and anxiety that life brings. We can bring those things to God, who wants us to come before him as he molds us and shapes us into his masterpiece, even in the midst of these difficult moments in our lives. It's in these moments with God that we can acknowledge what we are feeling. We can be completely honest with him. We can name why it is bothering us. And we can shift our focus to something else that is a reality, and that is God's role in the middle of the mess, in the middle of the chaos, in the middle of the struggle, in the middle of the darkness. Think of it this way. When we are stressed or anxious, it can be helpful to name what, why, and who. Here's what I mean. Imagine that you're in a season of life right now where you don't feel particularly close to your spouse or a friend or a loved one. And I don't care how old you are, when people in your life are fighting and not getting along, it's stressful. We have this heavy weight on our hearts and our minds. Now imagine that during that kind of stress you pray, God, we are yelling at each other all the time. We're not even talking to each other right now. Acknowledge what is causing that stress. And then say, I'm afraid that our relationship is falling apart. I hate walking on eggshells at home. The mood in the house is always tense. We are so caught up in the drama and chaos that it feels like there is never a peaceful moment. That's the why that's causing your stress. Acknowledging that. And finally saying, God, I know even if my home life feels out of control, you are in control. Even if it feels like no one cares, I know that you care about me deeply. And even if things change at home, you never change. That's who God is. Naming what, why, and who. Taking those honest prayers to God. And what David did is so simple, but yet it is also so very powerful. He could have kept his eyes on his circumstances. He could have kept his focus on what was causing his stress. Instead, he put his eyes and his energy on the God he trusted to carry him through it. And that simple act helped ease the feelings of stress and anxiety that he was experiencing in his life. Let me just pause here for a second, because I realize that dealing with something so big and so scary and so overwhelming as anxiety isn't always this simple. Well, sometimes saying, God, I trust you is all it takes to wipe out every ounce of our anxiety. Most of the time, it's not always that easy. While I certainly believe God can do that, I also know that sometimes it takes more than shifting our focus and trust towards God. We can know and believe in and trust in God, but still experience a lot of anxiety. Trusting God is not always a quick fix, but it's always a step in the right direction towards becoming his ultimate masterpiece. David's circumstances didn't change right away, but in that moment, he was able to direct his focus and give his fears to God. He reminded himself of what's true about God, that we can trust God no matter how we feel or where we find ourselves. You see, while David may not have given us the 100% cure for our anxiety every single time, he did give us a starting point to deal with it. We can practice breaking the cycle of anxiety by choosing to trust in God. You see, while anxiety can be a powerful force in our lives, God is even more powerful. And because of that, we can trust him with all of our feelings. We can trust and believe he will provide us with what we need to navigate our anxiety. And we can trust God to give us the tools to support people in our lives who are experiencing anxiety too. We can trust God to give us the tools we need to handle our own anxiety or to support others who are experiencing those feelings. Have you ever seen a toolbox before? I'm sure that most of us have. It's full of a bunch of different tools that do different things for different jobs. When we're working on a project, sometimes we need only a few tools. Maybe we're hanging a picture, so we just need a hammer and some nails. It's a small job, but we need just a few things to get that job done. Or maybe we're building a deck, and so we need a saw, a hammer, a wrench, probably the whole toolbox to build something that big. Dealing with stress and anxiety is a lot like tools in a toolbox. There are different tools to help us with different things. Sometimes we need just a few of those tools, and other times we need them all. Either way is okay, but God is the one who gives us all the tools for a reason. Maybe you don't feel stressed often or struggle with anxiety at all in your life, but chances are you know or care about someone who struggles with these feelings. And what's so amazing is that you are one of the tools that God provides to help them handle stress and anxiety. And because anxiety in particular can be long-lasting and overwhelming, it's important to know how to help your friend when they're struggling with these feelings. Because of the unpredictable nature of anxiety, the ways to support your friend may change. Here are 5 ways that God can use you to help someone else become the masterpiece that He desires them to be. Number 1 is this: be someone they can go to and trust. Let them know that they can talk to you about what they're feeling openly and without any fear of judgment. It's so important that they know that you are there to listen. You won't try to change what they're feeling or thinking, and that your feelings about them won't change. They may not know exactly what they need, and you might not know exactly how to support them, but that's okay. Sometimes all they really need to know is that you are there for them. Number 2 is this: listen more than you talk. Just be with them and really listen to them. You can do this by making eye contact, putting your phone away while they're talking and not interrupting them. Try asking them if they want to share what they're feeling, if they want to just hang out, or what you can do to help. Number 3 is this: you don't have to fix their feelings. Tell your friend that you're there to support them and that you care about them and how they're feeling. But remember, it's not your job to change or fix their feelings. Just be their friend. Number 4 is to celebrate their successes. When someone takes a step towards confronting their fears and anxiety, celebrate with them. Do something fun together. Help them feel proud of themselves for addressing some issues in their lives. And number 5 is this: encourage them to talk to other encouraging people. Maybe a pastor or a small group leader or a counselor, a group of friends. If they're afraid to do those things, offer to go with them, encouraging them to open up to other trusted people who can help them process and discover helpful tools is so important when loved ones are struggling. Now, I share all of this because I went through my own difficult, dark season of anxiety a few years ago. I was working in a toxic work environment, pulling into the parking lot every morning and just feel this heavy weight instantly on my chest. My stomach would be in knots all day throughout the workday. I felt sick to my stomach constantly. I got headaches all the time. I wasn't sure about my future, and I was bringing those negative feelings home with me, and it was impacting my relationship with my wife and my kids. I was doubting God's presence and calling in my life. And then in the middle of all of that, I also lost my dad, and I was wrestling with just all these emotions. And what I learned through that season of my life, the way I saw God at work in my life during that season, when I had lost almost all my hope for life, for everything, I saw God come alive, and I saw God leading me. I saw God doing things through different tools in His toolbox. And one of those things was this: simply identifying my feelings. I spent time taking walks or drives by myself just to simply cry and spend time alone with God. Listen to music or podcasts that help me identify my emotions and struggles. I spent time reading and rewriting the Psalms and prayers of David into my own story. There's different ways you can process your feelings, maybe through music or art or journaling. Take the time to just identify what you're feeling. Write those things down. Write an honest prayer journal to God about your emotions. Number 2 is this: focus on trusting God by thinking about how big and how powerful and how loving He is. Think about how He can walk us through anything we might be feeling or encountering, because He can overcome it all. When we feel afraid or anxious or alone, we can simply pray, God, I trust you. Not only does that simple prayer remind us of what's true, it also helps us unlock another tool, that ability to shift our hearts and our minds and our focus. As David showed us, one of the best things we can do when we experience anxiety is to take our focus off of what's overwhelming us. And instead, we choose to remember what's true about God, that He is for us and He will help us through every season of life. The third thing I learned in my season was this: to seek out tools that God gives us. I am incredibly thankful for the encouraging people that God surrounded me with throughout my life. I am especially thankful for my wife, who encouraged me to seek out counseling in my darkest seasons and stuck by my side no matter how difficult life felt in those months and years that I wrestled through those emotions. In fact, we took a vacation to Cape Cod, which is what this picture is from here. We saw lots of lighthouses there. And think about that image of the lighthouse, and the lights in the darkness, guiding us, showing us the way. And my wife and so many other friends and family members were people who guided me back to God, who guided me back to a healthy outlook on life. And I just loved taking those vacations with my wife, a way to just escape and process the difficult realities in our lives. I'm thankful for the many friends and family members who prayed for me and reminded me that God was not finished with me yet. I made so many phone calls to people who had made a positive impact in my life, and just talked with them and cried with them and prayed with them. And every one of those encouraging voices became the tools that I needed to hold on to life and see God's hope for the future. Here are just a few other ideas for you to think about if you're going through a dark season in your life right now. These are just some ways that maybe God might be molding and forming you into the person He wants you to become. Number one is this. One thing you can do is just simply care for yourself. Are you resting? Are you eating well? Are you exercising? Are you sleeping at night? Believe it or not, paying attention to each of these things can be really helpful. So next time you feel stress and anxiety creeping in, try taking a step to care for yourself. Secondly, talk to someone. A counselor is a great place to start. I did a lot of counseling both individually and with my wife to kind of walk through some of the emotions and things that I was dealing with. They're trained to help you work through your feelings and move forward in a positive way. If you're nervous about this, talk to your spouse or a small group leader or a parent or a close friend and ask them if they can help you take this step, maybe even go with you those first few times. And finally, remember what is true. Make a habit of reading your Bible or simply reminding yourself of what the authors of Scripture and even Jesus Himself said is true about how valuable, loved, and cared for you are. This week, practice shifting your focus towards what is true for a few minutes each day. Maybe write down the blessings you have in your life in a journal. When you feel stressed or anxious, remind yourself of what's true over and over again. I know stress can feel really uncomfortable and negative. And I know anxiety can feel suffocating and like it's always around and never going to leave. It can feel like a mountain you'll never be able to climb. But when you feel that way, remember that God gives us the tools to handle anxiety. And it's using those tools, He chisels away, He chips away, He breaks apart. He surrounds us with a community of believers and encouraging friends and family. He does all these amazing things to shape us, to give us hope, to show us that it's all going to be worth it in the end. And He's going to work it out for His good. We can choose to trust that God's love can calm our fears. No matter if we're feeling the very real but short-term stress from situations in our lives or the long-lasting, overwhelming worry caused by anxiety, there is hope. When we put our trust in God and use the tools He has given us, we can find ways to move forward. God gives us the tools to handle anxiety in our own lives and the tools to support others. And so as you leave, as you head out for the rest of your day and week ahead, I want you to ask yourself this question. What is one tool that I can use to handle my stress or anxiety? Or how can I use the tools in my toolbox? How can I be one of God's tools to support others who are experiencing those same feelings? Thanks so much for watching. Thank you for just allowing me to be a part of this series and to share my story and my experiences with you. And may I hopefully be someone that gives you at least some hope and light, knowing that God is with you even in the darkest times. One thing that was really helpful for me in my season of anxiety and stress and depression and suicidal thoughts was simply going to the Psalms of David, the prayers of David. I was given an assignment in one of my classes to rewrite a psalm into my own words. And so I wanted to share that prayer with you to kind of give you at least something to kind of cling to think about, maybe even try yourself as you wrestle through these honest prayers with God. It comes from Psalm 27. It says this: "The Lord is my light and my salvation. Why should I be afraid? The Lord is my fortress, protecting me from danger. So why should I tremble? God, you are the reason that I live. You are always with me in every season, in every circumstance. You guide my life and protect me from everyone who is against me. When evil people come to devour me, when my enemies and foes attack me, they will stumble and fall. I feel like there are people who are trying to discourage me in life and in ministry right now. You will not allow them to defeat me or bring me down. Though a mighty army surrounds me, my heart will not be afraid. Even if I am attacked, I will remain confident. I am surrounded by pressure, stress, busyness, conflict, and criticism. I feel like people are watching and waiting for me to fail, but I will remain faithful to you, God. No one can criticize me for following you, living out the life and calling that you have for me. The one thing I ask of the Lord, the thing I seek most, is to live in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, delighting in the Lord's perfections and meditating in his temple. Help me to find quality time with you. I need to be with you, God. I need your truth and spirit to energize me and give me hope. Be the center of my life every day that I live, for he will conceal me there when troubles come. He will hide me in his sanctuary. He will place me out of reach on a high rock. Please deliver me from the stressful and toxic environment. I cannot continue to live and thrive in this place. I need you to bring me to a place where I can find your joy and passion again. I want to reach my full potential as a husband, father, and leader for you. Then I will hold my head high above my enemies who surround me. At his sanctuary I will offer sacrifices with shouts of joy, singing and praising the Lord with music. Help those who have authority in my life see your image and design in my life. Help them to notice you living within me. Help them to know that I am worthy and capable of serving you in your kingdom. I want my life and ministry to reflect you and point people to your glory. Hear me as I pray, O Lord. Be merciful and answer me. I am crying out to you and desperately need an answer to these prayers. My heart has heard you say, "Come and talk with me." And my heart responds, "Lord, I am coming." I long for these moments with you. I need these tears and conversations with you. I am running to you and desire more and more time with you. Do not turn your back on me. Do not reject your servant in anger. You have always been my helper. Don't leave me now. Don't abandon me, O God of my salvation. You are always faithful to me, even when I don't deserve your presence. You have never turned your back on me. I have been in some really dark places recently, but you continue to bring me out. Please don't leave me there. I need you now more than ever before. Even if my father and mother abandon me, the Lord will hold me close. Wrap me in your arms. Surround me with your Holy Spirit. Remind me that you are there and that you have a plan for me. Teach me how to live, O Lord. Lead me along the right path, for my enemies are waiting for me. Help me to lead a life that honors you. Help me to remain completely faithful to you, God. Do not let me fall into their hands, for they accuse me of things I've never done. With every breath, they threaten me with violence. Help me to see your truth above any false accusations said about me. If anyone has fault with me, let it be because I am striving to follow you and not the ways of this world. Protect me from my enemies and those who have no desire to actually know me. Yet I am confident I will see the Lord's goodness while I am here in the land of the living. Keep my eyes focused on you and your plans for my future. You have blessed me in so many ways. Remind me of those blessings and help me to look ahead to more blessings to come. Wait patiently for the Lord. Be brave and courageous. Yes, wait patiently for the Lord. I have endured this struggle for a long time now. I continue to be patient, but I need your strength in order to make it through this challenging season. Help me to be faithful, confident, and fearless as I follow you. It's in Jesus' name I pray. Amen.